Clearly, the investing fish don't like the tariff food. So why is the White House getting into this tariff war with China? Joining me now from Nashville, Tennessee, hedge fund manager, behavioral economist, and columnist for Forbes, Thomas Landstreet. Tom, the president says we're not in a trade war. It sure sounds like a trade war, sure smells like a trade war, it sure acts like a trade war. The stock market, I think, is considering it a trade war. And it's interesting when you talk about intellectual property, as the president mentioned, that China steals our intellectual property. That needs to stop. And we need to hit him and hit him hard. But I don't think tariffs is the way to go. I think we hit him in the banking, because we also know that China is manipulating its money. We need to hit him through the banking process. But one more note before I let you speak. $500 billion trade deficit, it's an interesting number. As far as I know, the way they calculate a trade deficit, they also include cash. That would be cash infusions into this country, into private companies, and possibly our public debt that we're selling to China. So that $500 billion, just on those couple things alone, is somewhat misleading. And I've always argued that a trade deficit isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I've used this example before, and people have poo-pooed it, but I think it's accurate. For example, you and I, we have a trade deficit with our grocery store down the street because we want the stuff from the grocery store.
You're exactly right, Graham. You've got terrific instincts. My old boss, Arthur Lapper, always lamented the fact that the word deficit was used in this circumstance, because he would argue, and I agree, that a trade deficit is a capital surplus. You know, would you rather have capital lined up at your borders to get out or to get in? And so when they actually, when we're buying stuff from them, we're giving them dollars to come to use. So I think that this is much ado about nothing. The trade deficit is not a bad economic metric whatsoever to look at. We consume a lot. We produce a lot. I think that they are basically like two boxers that have just entered the ring, and they'll take a few swipes at each other, and then they'll either get into a real fight or not. I happen to think that these are just a war of words. Now, he made a mistake. China's regime has to stay in power, and they use a number of tools to do that. One of them is they've got to appear like they're strong. They've got to appear like China is, on this irrevocable path to hegemony. He probably should have done this in private, because the collateral damage in the stock market is fairly significant, as you suggested.
Sure, there are people who would come on this program, like Peter Navarro, who I've known for many, many years, an advisor to the president. And they would say, well, we're using this as leverage in our negotiations. Fine, great, wonderful. But in the meantime, Tom, what happens is this is a tax, and it begins to get a fuel of its own. For example, when we tax aluminum or steel, then domestic aluminum and or steel can raise their prices to just below the tariff rate coming in from China. That affects what we buy here. In other words, the price goes up for that can of beer or that can of soup or the vehicle that you're buying. And here's the problem. It also includes farmers now in the Central Valley of California and elsewhere. They're going to be hit. We know from our history in 1930, Smoot-Hawley, this is how it all started. And listen, I'm not trying to be hey, depression is right around the corner, but we also have to know our history here, and that in the meantime, that maybe it is being used as leverage for negotiation. We, the people, pay the price because they're going to go up. Prices are going to go up necessarily.
They already are. From what I hear from the surveys we've done among producers and distributors of steel and aluminum, prices are already going up. They don't even know day to day what the prices are because they're going up so quickly. And by the way, if China produces cheap goods and services for us to buy, that benefits us greatly. I'm not sure that without Walmart and maybe Amazon, which is cheap goods and services from China, that we would have had any middle class prosperity during the last 9 years whatsoever. One more thing about the steel and aluminum that China has in excess supply. Few people are talking about why they have so much excess supply of these products. And I'll tell you why. You might remember during the 08-09 crisis, when the whole world went into a recession except China, and China continued to grow at 6.9% GDP growth, a bogus number, by the way. Right. They continued the wheels of production throughout the decline, even though they did not have any customers for those products. So they stockpiled them. Now the demand's come come back, they're dumping them on the global market. That's bad for China. That's a terrible allocation of resources for China, Graham, and they're going to suffer. So, and the benefit to us is we get cheaper goods and services. So I'm like you, I'm not on board this at all, but I do think that it'll calm down. I think he's going to back down. I think perhaps next week it'll be over.
All right. Another issue that is affecting the stock market is Amazon. And the president has been tweeting about Amazon quite a lot over the past few days. This tweet reads, "I am right about Amazon costing the United States Post Office massive amounts of money for being their delivery boy. Amazon should pay those costs plus and not have them borne by the American taxpayer. Many billions of dollars. Post office leaders don't have a clue, or do they?" My take on this is pretty simple. First of all, don't blame Amazon, blame the post office. It's their model. If they're not charging enough to deliver these packages, then raise the rates, for heaven's sakes. Amazon, number two, Amazon pays a lot of taxes. Gasoline taxes when they ship these items. They're paying taxes when they open up all kinds of resource centers around the country. Number three, they're also employing all kinds of Americans. And in my opinion, they help change the entire business model in this country toward the future. They should be applauded for that. And finally, number four, it is what I would call an American tradition to try and mitigate tax exposure, right? If you're a business, you don't want to pay a red cent more than you have to.
And the same if you're a consumer. We have a no state income tax in Tennessee. You may know that, 0. Yeah. But we have a high sales tax of 9.25. Amazon's been fantastic for us because until now we haven't been paying that tax. I don't like it the way he attacks companies. Couldn't he do it in private? Amazon is a very important development in our world, and I agree with you 100%. And about the post office, you know that they have 520,000 employees. They lost $3 billion last year. They could outsource the post office. They could just sell off those assets. And by the way, there's $60 billion worth of real estate on the post office's books. I know in the finest neighborhoods in Nashville, we have big edifices to the post office that we could sell off. I think we should start that conversation right away and not attack Amazon for taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that we can still live up to the constitutional mandate and Ben Franklin's dream to move the mail in this country privately. But that needs to be looked at. It's well overdue. Thomas, thank you.